Hello, this is AstrologerCoach Sonja Francis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming new moon in almost 12.5 degrees of Capricorn, which will launch a new moon cycle on January 2nd at 1:33 p.m. New York time, East Coast time in the US, and 6:33 p.m. London time. Now, there's three quick things I would like to mention before I get started with this new moon video. First of all, Leah, which is a very talented new certified soul-based astrologer, joined my practice recently, and some of you already know about her. We had a promotion for the first 10 people to book a reading with her to get a 50% discount in exchange for filling out a brief survey and giving their feedback about her services. And we still have 3 readings left as of the moment I'm recording this. So if you hurry up, you might be able to still be one of those 3 people who get the 50% off discount. So click on the link below this video to take advantage of that and support Leah in getting some feedback and some testimonials. And also the second thing is on January 8th of 2022, we have a webinar called About All of 2022. And you feel free to join us for a full forecast about the coming year and also setting some really powerful intentions for 2022. And this webinar is not included in the monthly forecasting forum series. So please sign up even if you are already a star member. Early bird special is available already right now for $27 only for everybody. So feel free to take advantage of that. And then lastly, I also want to mention that I will have a big 2-week sale on my website coming up January 8th until the 23rd. So for 2 weeks, everything will be discounted, everything that you can buy on my website. That includes courses, webinars, readings, coaching sessions, tutoring sessions, anything is going to be discounted, all of it. So stay tuned for that and keep checking my website for details. But yes, so that's it. That's all I wanted to say right from the get-go so I don't forget about it. Now let's talk about this month's new moon. Now, new moons are good times to reflect on our lives and set new intentions. This is therefore a good time to go within and plant seeds for anything we would like to accomplish over the next 28 days and maybe even beyond 28 days since it's the first new moon of the year. And in Capricorn, this new moon directs us to reassess our relationship to power and authority. So the highest vibration of Capricorn is self-mastery, which is the development of responsibility, resourcefulness, reliability, the ability to set realistic goals and establish healthy boundaries. And so, of course, for the next 28 days, this is really the perfect time for us to work some more on these issues or in that area of our lives where this is taking place in our own chart. And Capricorn, of course, is all about practice. You know, get better at something. Because when you practice something, you get better at it. And when you get better at it, you become more of an expert. And when you become more of an expert, that is the road to self-mastery. So because this is the first new moon of the year, and since Capricorn represents that quest for self-mastery on a physical plane, some useful questions that you can ask yourself include, what is my relationship to self-mastery? I mean, what does that word even mean? Because how often do we use the word self-mastery in our day-to-day language or in a day-to-day thinking? So just check and see, what's your relationship with self-mastery or with that word? And feel free to journal on that or meditate on that. And am I going about things in a realistic way in my life, in all different areas of my life? Am I going about things in a realistic way? And what does setting healthy boundaries look like to me? Because, you know, setting healthy boundaries sounds like awesome and it's like, yay, I definitely know how to do that. And yes, I'm setting healthy boundaries in my life. But let's investigate. Let's really get clear about what does that even mean? And am I doing that in all areas of my life with everybody? And what are healthy boundaries, right? Does that mean setting a strict no to something? Does it mean being open to seeing how something goes and then making adjustments and saying no when that's healthy, when that's required. What does it mean to set healthy boundaries in our lives? And what do I know about my own limitations? Now, Capricorn is very clear on the fact that in the real world, in the physical world, we have limitations. Everybody does. Life has limitations. Situations have limitations. Now, what do I know about my own limitations, or what do I know about other people's limitations? Because often we say things like, I can't believe this person did X, Y, Z. And in that moment, do we expect this other person not to have any limitations? Do we expect that this person is perfect and not human in that way, that it belongs to the physical realm where limitations do exist and where limitations are a reality of life? So just to investigate that for ourselves, what do I know about my own limitations and other people's limitations? And what are my priorities in connection with long-term goals? Capricorn is very interested in long-term goals because it's interested in moving towards a goal that feels satisfying, or something that we can build, that we can sustain, something that can live beyond even our own life expectancy. Now, what does the word integrity bring out in me? This is another word that's very Capricornian. Integrity. How do I live into that? What does it mean to me? What does it bring out in me? And where am I on the road to self-mastery? Where am I on the road to self-mastery? Because all of these things have to do with walking the path of self-mastery, right? So as best as you can, prepare for the future, make commitments, and recognize responsibilities. In other words, nurture your dreams in a realistic way. Anything that you'd like to accomplish, rather than making it into a I wish I could, or I wish it were like that, just check to see, well, what is it like? Where is my A? Where is my B? Where is my beginning point? Where is my end point? And how can I realistically move along that line? And how can I realize, what I would like to realize in this human potential that I am in this lifetime, in a realistic way? So focus on setting and achieving practical and attainable long-term goals. That's what Capricorn wants. It just wants to be real. What's real? What's doable? What's workable? One step at a time, one day at a time. This is not about immediate results. This is about quality, and in particular, quality of the foundation that you're building, so that whatever you're building can go beyond time and space, right? It can really, the quality of something can withstand the challenges of time, or the challenges that can come about over time. Now, Capricorn also invites us to set the kind of realistic limits and boundaries that allow everyone involved to learn from the consequences of their choices. Now, what does that mean? With Capricorn, we're all about knowing what works and what doesn't, and we're ready to accept the consequences when something didn't work. When we tried something that didn't work, we are ready to accept the consequences of that. And so when we're interacting with other people, we want to be aware that there are always consequences to any choice that we make, to any, limits that are in place. If we're not honoring those limits, there are consequences to that. If we're not honoring our own boundaries or other people's boundaries, then there are consequences to that as well in the long run. Maybe not immediately, but in the long run, always. Because Saturn is always about time, the consequence that comes with time. So ask yourself, where in my life am I able to set realistic limits and boundaries? And where am I not? And that, of course, might be the even more interesting question, the second one. Where am I not able to set these realistic limits and boundaries? And to just, rather than judge ourselves for that, to just be curious about that, to be investigative about that, to be open-minded about it, and to see, well, if I'm not setting realistic limits and boundaries in certain places in my life, what are the consequences of that? And how might I shift that? So another question that, of course, comes out of that as well, what might I be afraid of when I don't set realistic limits and boundaries? Because why are we not setting them? Because if there are consequences to us not doing this, then there has to be something else in place that keeps us from doing it. And very often that can be fear, that we can be afraid, we can be, just feeling inadequate, or we can feel not confident enough, or whatever the reason might be, but there might be some fear there. So check to see what that is, what's underneath that, because that can be very helpful to discover. And again, it's not about judging, it's really more about discovery. Now, Capricorn relates directly to the level of our maturity. That's why Capricorn also has to do with ages and, again, time, right? Because time can have something to do with becoming more mature. As the longer we live, the more mature we might be. Not necessarily true, but it's a possibility if we're doing the work, if we're allowing ourselves to mature. So ask yourself, what would taking 100% responsibility for my life look like? And what if I responded to situations in a way that respects and serves all of those involved? And do I respect the laws of matter? Anything that's earthly, anything that's connected with the material realm, with the earth realm, right? Because we're human beings on this planet, right? We have physical form. So we have to respect the laws of physical form. So do I respect the laws of matter? And what am I willing to undergo to overcome adversity? Because part of being a human being on this planet in this physical form has to do with having to move through adversity at one time or another in our lives. Maybe not all the time. Maybe there are phases where we do. Maybe there are phases where we don't at all. And then maybe there are moments when we do. So what am I willing to undergo to overcome adversity? Because Capricorn is very interested in overcoming things, in doing better, making sure that when there are obstacles in our way, when there are challenges in our way, that we're not giving up. Capricorn is not about giving up. Capricorn is about keep going. You just keep going until you reach your goal. So that's Capricorn is very persistent. So what am I willing to undergo to overcome adversity, and how committed am I to that? Because in the long run, when we do not give up, when you do keep going, when we stay committed to certain things in our lives, obviously if it's realistic as well to stay committed to those things, if it's realistic in terms of our current now moment and our current experience of things, then that can be a really powerful place to come from. This consistency, this commitment, this keep going. Now, let's talk about some of the aspects connected to this particular new moon chart. Now, the new moon squares Chiron in Aries and trines Uranus in Taurus. So let's start with the trine, since that has a closer degree in terms of aspect. The aspect degrees is a little bit tighter. So that trine is going to be more powerful. Now, Uranus always brings a certain level of creativity and reinvention to the table. So you can ask yourself with this trine, how might new, fresh, and practical ideas create progress with my long-term goals? And what is asking to be reinvented in my life? Where do I need to reinvent things or shift things, like bring something new in, like a fresh way of approaching something? And where might I find something unexpected that could change my connection to my inner authority? Change your connection to your inner authority, because, we have Capricorn and Taurus, right? Uranus is in Taurus. The new moon is in Capricorn. Capricorn and Taurus, they are both earth signs. So they support each other in really sticking to something that is valuable, that is working, that can bring us success in some way. And so Capricorn has to do with authority, like I mentioned earlier, power and authority. So with Uranus, we're looking, what is there some unexpected quality, something unexpected that could change my experience or my connection to my inner authority, what I think I have authority over, what I have say over in my life. And how about with authority figures out there in the world? Is there something unexpected that could change for me in connection to authority figures out there in the world? So there's inner authority, and then there's authority out there in the world. And in what ways can we shift our relationship to that? Now, the new moon squares Chiron as well. So that square could cause us to feel impatient or maybe even triggered. So definitely bring as much compassion and kindness to yourself and others as you can, because this is really an opportunity to embrace our own humanity and to see ourselves and others as human beings. And human beings means that we have flaws, we have faults, we have limitations, we have quirks. We are different from each other in certain ways. We have sensitivities, we have wounding. So compassion, and in particular self-compassion, is really key here with this square. So ask yourself, other than career and long-term goals, where could I channel my impatient masculine energies into something that satisfies me on a physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual level? So something to kind of contemplate. Again, feel free to journal or to meditate on these questions, especially if you feel a strong resonance with one of the questions. Definitely work with the question. Now, Jupiter re-enters the sign of Pisces on December 28th, only 5 days before the new moon becomes exact. And so that means that Jupiter will be in 0 degrees of Pisces at the time of the new moon. And that is an exalted degree, which means that Jupiter is going to be in a very strong, vibrant place with this creative, sensitive sign while it's in 0 degrees. And Jupiter will remain in Pisces until May 10th, 2022. So this time frame kind of resonates back to when Jupiter was in Pisces in the spring of 2021. To be exact, it was there May 13 until July 28, 2021. So spring, summer. So we're kind of like feeling a resonance back to that time. So think about the late spring, early summer, and ask yourself, what was in the way of a connection to my inner divinity back then? Or what was my relationship to my inner divinity back then? What did I feel? How did I connect to it? Or did I not connect to it? What prevented me from slowing down at that time? Or did I really need to slow down because I had no other option, whether that was because of physical, mental, or emotional reasons? And what about turning inwards or trusting my inner guidance? What was going on for me back then in regards to that? Turning inwards, trusting my inner guidance. And what have I learned about my intuitive knowing since then? Is there more to learn? And of course we are, because Jupiter will be again in Pisces until May 2022. we are getting a chance to learn more about our intuitive knowing, about our inner guidance, about slowing things down, about our inner divinity and the connection that we have to that, and how we relate to it. Now, Jupiter squares the moon nodes in Gemini-Sagittarius in this new moon chart. And this square invites us to take a closer look at our belief system and social cultural conditioning. We're invited to open our hearts and make choices accordingly to that open heart. And we're asked to look for solutions that stem from a deeper understanding of oneness and interconnectedness with all that is alive on this planet. So we're really invited to kind of trust this interconnectivity between life outside of us and life inside of us. Because let's face it, even though we might not think ourselves as like having life inside of us unless we're, carrying a child as a woman, but everybody has life inside of them because every single cell in your body is alive and carries information that is connected to whatever is going on out there in the universe. So there is a very, very strong interconnectivity between every single cell in our body and what goes on out there in the world and all the things that are happening out there on this planet and beyond the planet in the universe. So ask yourself, what road might lead to greater heart connections? And what might open up if I became more connected to the part of me that is pure love? And what if I took a 5% more positive attitude towards human life and all of its paradoxes? And remember, Pisces, Jupiter being in Pisces, really invites us to expand our perspective beyond what's visible, beyond what makes sense, beyond what's rational, beyond the linear. What we're really being invited with Jupiter and Pisces is to really see the paradox of life, to see the unseen, to use our sixth sense, to connect to more than what is apparent in the intellectual, mental sense. It's really inviting us to sort of like to connect to the energetic body of the world around us and the world inside of us. The energetic body. So there's a sensing, a feeling that's connected to that. Now, here are some questions you can ask yourself here with this. What might it look like for me personally if the deepest perspective shift was not political or scientific, but spiritual? What might that look like for me personally? And what might promote a spiritual perspective around my connection to all of my surroundings? How can I connect sort of in a spiritual way to all of my surroundings? And how can I sort of have a perspective in that way? And what am I aware of right now that would shift my perspective if I allowed myself to just feel into it, right? Just remember, Pisces is all about feeling things, sensing things on a very minute level, on a very small level, and a very subtle level, right? It's a very subtle thing. Now let's talk a little bit about Saturn here, because Saturn's placement in Aquarius plays an important role with this new moon. And the reason for that is, of course, that Saturn rules Capricorn. And since the new moon is in Capricorn, Saturn is our planet for this new moon chart. So Saturn is associated with the law of karma. In other words, with the natural result of our actions. What we sow, we reap. Now in Aquarius, Saturn invites us to focus on and build communities that are sustainable and self-responsible. We are sovereign beings who have a choice. So ask yourself, where could I take 5% more responsibility for a choice that I made? Whether that's, 5 minutes ago, an hour ago, a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago? Where could I take 5% more responsibility for a choice that I made? And just remember that when we work on ourselves, right? When we pose these questions for ourselves, we're also doing it so that there is a shift and a ripple that can affect everybody around us. Because asking ourselves this question, we're actually focusing on what we have influence over. And by shifting that, we're shifting, it's like a ripple effect, right? We're shifting the world around us. So where could I take 5% more responsibility for a choice that I made? And what might I do differently if I knew for certain that all of my choices had social as well as personal consequences? And so this might sound a little bit daunting and a little bit heavy-handed, right? But Capricorn is a little bit heavy-handed. The truth is everything in life has consequences. And consequences doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. Sometimes we think of consequences as bad, right? Like, oh my God, there was a consequence. But consequences can be good or bad. It just means that something is a result of something because there was a choice made, and then the consequence is the result that we're getting from that choice. So what might I do differently if I knew for certain that all of my choices had social as well as personal consequences? Might I slow down and take more time with certain choices? So when we know that every choice that we make has a ripple effect, let's call it a ripple effect, into the world around us, might we want to take more care with the choices that we're making? Might we want to slow down? Might I want to do the groundwork and be especially discerning if that meant I could make better choices that create more beneficial outcomes for everyone? So again, this is a very Capricornian, Saturnian thing, is this sense of like, let's do something right, or let's do it well. Let's do it with quality. So we need to slow down so we can lay the groundwork really, really well, just like we're laying the groundwork or the foundation of a house really, really well. We make sure that's well in place so that the house doesn't fall down a month later, right? Or a couple of days later, or a year later. So we want to set really good foundations, good groundwork, and be especially discerning. So what might that look like if we were to do that especially with important choices that we're making for our health, for our well-being, for our finances, for our long-term goals, for our very important relationships. So every choice that we're making. So sit with that. Just sit with that and see how that feels as you are allowing these questions to kind of wash over you. Remember, you do not have to answer these questions quickly or right away. Allow the answers to come to you intuitively. Now, Saturn in Aquarius still squares Uranus in Taurus in this new moon chart, and has been for a while, has been pretty much all of 2021. And they will continue to square each other for most of 2022, not all of 2022. And this ongoing square is asking us to find creative ways to stretch ourselves when we feel the pull between control and freedom, tradition and progress. And this square also promotes social, economic, and environmental reform. So we're getting a chance here with this square to stretch ourselves on an individual level, but also on a collective level. We're being stretched here. Now, I should also say here, squares involving Uranus always offer opportunities for major breakthroughs. So eventually, as we're stretching ourselves individually and collectively, there is going to be a breakthrough that will happen with Uranus at some point. But there will be a little bit of a back and forth at first. before we can get to that breakthrough. 'Cause sometimes things have to break down a little bit too before we can get that breakthrough. So ask yourself, what if I could help birth a new age, and with it a new world based on heart-centered consciousness and individual freedoms that honor our bodies and the planet we live on? And what if there were big, bold ways in which I could do that? And what if there were small, simple ways in which I could do that? So remember, we can make bold gestures and we can step into big ways of doing things, but we can also do things in small, simple ways. And so depending on what your personality is, depending on where you're at currently in your life, depending on, how much you've worked through some of your own stuff already or not, you might want to either start small or you might want to go really big, depending on where you're at. So you have to be realistic about what works for you. Now, we are continuously invited to step up in the world and become mature, responsible planetary citizens while honoring our individuality. Now remember, you never want to give up honoring yourself for the greater good. That does not work. That never works. And history has proven that that doesn't work. We want to always honor our own individuality while also being mature, responsible planetary citizen out there in the world. It needs to be a balance, right? It cannot be an either or. There needs to be a balance between individuality and the how we're relating to the collective and to other people. Now, in other words, we need to make a difference one by one, even when it seems as though we're too small to create a big shift on our own. No matter how small it may seem, every ripple moves something. Every ripple changes something. So as best as you can, observe your mind. What future am I focused on? How might holding space, right? Like just giving ourselves space, ourselves and others, how might holding space contribute to a better future? Now, Saturn in Aquarius also sextiles Chiron in Aries. So this combination presents an opportunity to connect with others and engage in a healing process that can bring progress in our various communities, maybe even worldwide. And we are so much more powerful than we realize, especially when we come together. So what I want you to notice here with the previous component of Saturn squaring Uranus, I was talking about how each one of us needs to make a difference and how each person makes a ripple effect. With this component of Saturn sextiling Chiron, we're also invited to connect to other people. So it's not an either or, it's an and. It's I am making a difference on my own. I am creating these little ripple effects, individually speaking, and I can also come together with other people and I can create things that can create healing in the world, healing for our traditions, healing for the masculine energies in the world, the doing, the, trying to get to places, the pursuing, the fighting for, the, all of that is very masculine. So any of that, our active ways of being, our sexuality, our persona, our needing to have goals and make progress, that's all very masculine in nature. So creating some healing around this masculine energy, because some of it might need to balance out a little bit more with the feminine. We might have to create more of a balance with that. So ask yourself, could I inspire others, even if I let them see that I have vulnerabilities and that I'm human? What might become possible if I allowed myself to be both courageously vulnerable and committed to building sustainable collaborations that serve humanity. Now, another planet that we want to mention here is Mercury, because Mercury enters Aquarius less than 12 hours before the new moon becomes exact, which means it will also be in 0 degrees of this sign, of this forward-thinking sign, and therefore it will also be exalted, just like Jupiter. Now, this reminds us that where we focus our mind is important, that our thoughts and words create our future and that they matter. So ask yourself, what thoughts and words might inspire a better future? What might become possible if I took 5% more responsibility for my inner dialogue and the energy those thoughts disperse, right? Because every thought that we have sort of like moves out into the world, because it's all energy, right? Thinking is energy. So when we think a thought, that energy starts to move around. So what might become possible if I took 5% more responsibility for my inner dialogue and the energy that those thoughts disperse? Now remember that not all change is progress. Consider all options first and then respond rather than reacting. Sometimes we think that if we do something fast and quick and we change something quickly, then that will help us feel better about ourselves, or will help us to see that things are moving forward. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that kind of moving forward is a progress that serves us. So stay flexible and be willing to look beyond the obvious. Be willing to look beyond the obvious. Not every change is healthy. Not every change is progress. Now, I should also mention here that Mercury is already in its pre-shadow phase at the time of the new moon. It enters its shadow phase on December 29th when it reaches 24.5 degrees of Capricorn, and it will remain there until January 14th when it comes to a halt in 10 degrees of Aquarius. Now, for those of you who don't know what a pre-shadow phase is, it means that for the next 2 weeks while Mercury is in this pre-shadow phase, we will be traveling through territory that we will later revisit during the Mercury Retrograde phase. And that starts on January 14th. So from December 29th until January 14th, pay attention to what comes up around long-term goals, business interactions, and visions for your various communities, networks, and like-minded people, because you may need to revisit certain conversations or ideas or interactions. You may need to have greater inner clarity that you will receive during the Mercury retrograde phase from January 14th until February 3rd. Okay? So the pre-shadow phase is always a time where we want to pay attention to what comes up, because those things will have to be revisited during the retrograde phase. Now, speaking of retrograde phases, Venus in Capricorn has gone retrograde on December 19th and is therefore moving backwards as seen from the Earth's perspective in this new moon chart. Now, Venus in her retrograde phase invites us to reevaluate our long-term goals and business partnerships. It also invites us to connect internally to our own inner authority and sovereign nature. So ask yourself, where do I need to be more realistic about what I have to offer to the world? And where are my limitations? Are there any obstacles to achieving my long-term goals? And if so, where are they? What is my relationship to commitments? Right? Like, we all have a different relationship to what we want to commit to, what we don't want to commit to. What is our relationship to responsibility, to self-mastery? These are all things we can investigate during that Venus retrograde phase in Capricorn. Now, do my internal commitments align with my values? Venus is all about values, right? How about my external commitments? Do they align with my values? Or the reality of my finances? What about that? Or setting healthy boundaries in my various one-on-one relationships? Do I honor myself? So these are all things that we can ask ourselves during the Venus retrograde phase. And if you'd like to learn more about Venus's 6-week retrograde phase in Capricorn and how this is going to impact you personally, I recommend you get the MP4 video presentation, Venus retrograde, December, January 21, 22, which is one of the webinars that I have available on my website, and see how it relates to your own birth chart. And you can purchase this webinar by clicking on a link below this video. Now, Venus is still aligned with Pluto at the time of this new moon, and that invites us to confront our fears and face our shadow issues as they pertain to power and authority, our own power and authority, and other people's power and authority. So ask yourself, are there any old ways of being that I need to shed? Anything that still feels disempowering to me? Where do I still look outside of myself for permission or approval for what's right or what's wrong? Who are my favorite people to give my power to? This could be a relative or a friend, but it could also be a public figure or a person with social authority, such as a doctor, a scientist, a politician, a news anchor, etc. So sometimes we give our power to other people. And basically what that really means is that we're not actually coming from a powerful place from within ourselves, but we're allowing other people to hold that power for us and to make decisions on our behalf, or to tell us what to do, to say to us, this is what's best for you, rather than tuning in with our own inner power and going, what is best for me? What is right for me? What works for me in this moment? So we have a tendency sometimes to give our power away to other people. So another thing you can ask yourself with this Venus-Pluto alignment is, where might it serve me to dig deeper? Dig clear to the bottom of things. Discover the root causes. Is there anything in my life where I need to dig deeper? Where am I experiencing quick fix responses or behaviors in my life? What would a real change look like? What needs to die for something new and stronger and more authentic to be born in its place? What fears are holding me back from making real changes? And remember here with these questions, there might be a tendency to want to project these questions out into the world. But I think what's really important is to make sure that we really keep these questions with ourselves, because this is where you have control. With yourself, you can create change right here. This is your area of influence. You can create change right here. Anything outside of that area is not in your influence. So when we ask ourselves these questions, this is really so that we can create the change that we want to see out there in the world, within, right? It's a Gandhi quote, but it's so accurate, it's so precise, because when we can start to make changes right here within ourselves, the world will be impacted by that and will change. So keep the focus on yourself. Now, Pluto's involvement with this new moon chart could foster an all or nothing attitude over the next 28 days towards our long-term goals or our standing in society. In fact, we might become obsessed over certain things, and it might bring up a fear of losing control, possibly. You know, Pluto can have a lot to do with feeling out of control, with feeling like we're losing control and wanting to grip even harder so that we don't lose control. So it's really, really important with Pluto's involvement here. It's so important to stay heart-centered and grounded. Really keep your heart wide open. Trust that everything is there. Everything that you need is there, that you're not ever truly out of control. It just feels that way sometimes when you focus on the wrong things. But when you focus within, you're never truly out of control. So it's important that we stay heart-centered and grounded and engage tools or people whenever or wherever possible to help us let go of our fears and surrender to the power of our soul that resides within each one of us. Because there is a power inside of us that is connected to our soul power that is inside each one of us. So how can we find the tools and the people that can really help us, let go, release the fears, or surrender our fears, and really connect to that power within? Now, if you get obsessed about your accomplishments out there in the world, as best as you can, remind yourself to slow down and take breaks. Ask yourself, am I driven by fear, or am I driven by love or passion? If fear, worry, or concerns are present, could I simply acknowledge that experience without making it right or wrong? Just acknowledging it, not making it bigger, not making it smaller, just acknowledging whatever is there. And you can also close your eyes and ask yourself, is what I'm afraid of real right here, right now? Or is it a projection into the future? If it is a projection into the future, could I let go of expecting or even in some weird way wanting to create this future for myself? Could I choose more powerfully? Could I choose a future that allows me to feel empowered no matter what the circumstances? And it's very important to remember that power is an inside game. Power does never occur outside of us. Where there's power in the outside world, all that is an illusion. That's just an illusion of power. It's not actual power. Actual power is always an inside game. It's connected to yourself internally. Now, to sum it all up for this powerful new moon, we are invited to direct our attention to what needs to change individually and collectively. Change is not always easy, and sometimes it can be downright unpleasant, but it is necessary if we are to move towards a world that we want to live in and share with one another. A healthy world where we can all be healthy together. Now, you could ask yourself here is, what kind of future do I envision for myself and for all beings on this planet? And what realistic baby steps can I take to move towards this future? And where is it best to be flexible? And on the other hand, where must I remain focused and stay aligned with my visions or preferences? It's easy to get derailed by other people. It's easy to get derailed by the outside world. But if we can just hold this future that we actually want to create, I'm not saying a worst case scenario future here, a future that we actually want to create for ourselves, if we just keep that vision in place for ourselves, and just stay aligned with that vision and those preferences, but yet also stay flexible when it comes to dealing with the outside world. Stay focused internally, stay flexible externally. Now, this new moon conveys an extra potent message about our perception of physical reality and about our relationship to power, or the feeling of feeling empowered. So ask yourself, what might I notice if I become 5% more aware of my personal power? What resides within me? Where might I have given it away to others? Where do I let other people hold that power for me? And how might I begin to reclaim it? And just remember, other people only have power over you if you give it to them, if you let them have power. Because when we say it is somebody else who is influencing what we're experiencing, what we're feeling, what we are, how we're behaving is somebody else's person's fault, or our own limitations or our own behaviors are due to, our parents, or they're due to certain experiences we've had in the past. That may be true, but by doing that, you're really giving your power away to those people and to those situations. So rather than giving your power away, to just say, I am okay the way I am, despite of all of these experiences, despite of all of these people in my life, I am good, I am okay, I have my own power. And nobody can take that away from you if you don't let them. Oh, and the last question, of course, you can ask here with this as well is like, how might I begin to reclaim my power if I have given it away? If you have given it to other people, if you have given it to public figures, to doctors, media, people, who knows who. There are so many people we can give our power to. How can you reclaim it? How can you say, well, this is mine now. I own it. Owning all of your own life, all of your own experiences, all of your choices, all of your memories, that is powerful. And that gives you your power back. Now, this moon also calls us to stand for love, for truth, for unity. It reminds us that each one of us can be a powerful agent of change through our thoughts, words, and actions. And as best as you can, keep breathing, feeling, witnessing, and remember we're all participating in an unprecedented evolutionary shift. We are divine beings living in a dense physical reality, attempting to remember who we are and what we came here to do and how powerful we each are. So choose wisely for 2022 and beyond. Participate consciously in the evolution of existence on this planet, not from fear, but from the knowledge of your inner strength and personal power, the power of your heart and your humanity. And that's really powerful, the power of your heart and your humanity. Very powerful place to come from. And I also have a beautiful quote that you can read inside the new moon article that fits really well with this new moon. So feel free to check out this new moon article. It's available for all of my members. If you're not currently a member of my online community, feel free to become a member so you can read all my articles, and you can also get access to all my weekly blogs and to the full moon videos every month. And that's available. So feel free to check that out on my website. There will also be a link below for that. Now, if you do have an ascendant or any personal planets in 10 to 15 degrees of Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, or Libra, then this new moon will impact you more than other people. But even if you don't have planets and points in those degrees and signs, take a look at where does 12.5 degrees of Capricorn land in your own birth chart, and feel free to look at the area of life that's impacted in your own birth chart with that 12.5 degrees of Capricorn, because that will be the area for the next 28 days that you want to investigate more deeply and create more of a sense of realistic approaches there with all that Capricorn energy. And then if you don't know how to do that, feel free, or if you don't have a birth chart, feel free to check out my free class, How to Read Your Birth Chart. And that is available on my website at astrologercoach.com. On the homepage, if you scroll down, you get to a place where it says free class. You click on that window and off you go. Now, before we talk about setting intentions, let me mention one more time, we still have 3 whole life readings left with Leah for a 50% off discount in exchange for your feedback. So if you want to take advantage of that, click on the link below this video for this great discount. Also on January 8th, we have a webinar about all of 2022. Join us for a full forecast about the coming year and setting great intentions for 2022. And then I also need to say that this webinar is not included in the monthly forecasting forum series, so please sign up even if you are a star member. Early bird special is available right now for $27 for everyone. Lastly, I also want to mention that I will have a big 2-week sale on my website, January 8th until the 23rd, 2022. Everything will be discounted. I mean, everything. So stay tuned for that and keep checking my website for details. Now, new moon intentions. The new moon is also the best time to set some powerful intentions for this month's moon cycle. And the very best time to do this is after the new moon becomes exact, but definitely not during a moon void, of course. So this month, there are two most potent times to set intentions. The first one will be anytime between 1:33 p.m. on January 2nd and 11:21 a.m. on January 3rd. And the second one would be between 5:44 p.m. on January 3rd until 1:33 p.m. on January 4th. And all of this is Eastern time, New York time. If you do live in a different time zone than East Coast time in the United States or East Coast time in America, and converting time zones isn't your thing, I suggest that you join me on my Facebook fan page or follow me on Twitter. I will be posting reminders when it is the most potent time to set your intentions. So feel free to do that. And if you want to know a little bit more about setting intentions in general, feel free to click on the link below this video to read the article for how to set new moon intentions. All right, so that's about it. Have a lovely new moon. Have a lovely change into the new year, into 2022. If you're watching this already in 2022, Happy New Year. And hopefully I'll be able to welcome a lot of you on January 8th when we talk about 2022. So have a good one. Much love to all of you. This is Astrologer Coach Sonja Francis.